Jiwon's pen moved across the exam paper with steady confidence. The questions about alien cognitive patterns were challenging, but he had studied hard for this test. Around him, students from a dozen different species worked in silence. Some typed on holographic keyboards, others used neural interfaces. A few, like the crystalline Voxians in the corner, simply touched their answer sheets and transferred thoughts directly. He preferred the old way. Pen and paper felt real to him. The exam hall of Kronos Prime University stretched 3 stories high, with transparent walls showing the purple sky of this strange world. Jiwon had been here for 6 months now, the only human in his xenolinguistics program. Most days he loved it. Today, focused on Professor Velren's difficult questions, he barely noticed his surroundings. Question 17 asked about the relationship between language structure and spatial reasoning in species with multiple brain lobes. Jiwon knew the answer, but he needed to organize his thoughts. Without thinking, he scribbled a quick note in the margin of his test paper. The familiar symbols flowed from his pen like water, each stroke bringing comfort and clarity. Hiro, 기억하다. 할머니가 가르쳐준 것처럼 생각해. Remember, think like grandmother taught you. The words were in Korean, in Hangul script mixed with a few Hanja characters his grandmother had taught him as a child. He always thought better when he could process ideas this way first in the language of his childhood, before translating them into simplified Terran for his actual answers. A shadow fell across his desk. Jiwon looked up to find Professor Velren standing beside him. All 6 of her arms crossed in what he had learned was her expression of intense curiosity. The Quelthari professor's compound eyes focused on his exam paper with unsettling precision. "Student Jiwon," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species. "What is this notation you have made?" Jiwon's hand instinctively covered the Korean writing. His heart began to race. "Just personal notes, Professor, to help me think." Velren's head tilted in a way that suggested she was scanning the symbols with multiple visual spectrums. "I cannot identify this script. It does not match any language in the university database, not even archived or ceremonial variants." Other students were starting to look up from their work. A Drell student 2 rows away craned her long neck to see what was happening. Jiwon felt heat rising to his face. "It's nothing, really. Just marks to help me remember things." "Nothing." Velren's voice sharpened. "Student Jiwon, I have studied 17,000 languages across 800 species. I pride myself on recognizing even fragmentary examples of extinct scripts. This is completely unknown to me." She extended one of her upper arms toward his paper. "I must ask you to surrender your examination materials for review. If you have developed an encoding system to store unauthorized information, this constitutes academic fraud." "I'm not cheating." The words came out louder than Jiwon intended. Now every student in the hall was staring. "These are just notes. Personal notes." Velren's translator chip rendered her next words with absolute coldness. "Then you will not object to explaining them to the Academic Ethics Committee." The rest of the exam passed in a blur. Jiwon completed his answers mechanically, his mind racing. How had he been so careless? He knew better than to write in Korean where others could see. His parents had drilled that into him since childhood. Earth's integration into the Galactic Council had required linguistic unity. Everyone spoke simplified Terran now. The old languages were supposed to be gone, forgotten, erased from official existence, but they weren't gone. Not really. Millions of humans still spoke them in secret, taught them to their children in whispered lessons, kept them alive in hidden communities. Jiwon's grandmother had taught him Korean in the evenings, making him promise never to write it in public, never to speak it where the translators might hear. He had just broken that promise. After the exam, 2 university security officers escorted him to the administrative tower. They were polite but firm. One was a towering Brel with smooth gray skin. The other was something Jiwon didn't recognize, with too many joints in its limbs and eyes that glowed faintly blue. The ethics committee chamber was circular, with seats arranged in ascending tiers. 5 committee members looked down at him. Professor Velren sat among them, along with species representatives he had never met. The committee chair, an elderly Voxian whose crystalline body pulsed with soft light, spoke first. "Student Jiwon of Earth, you are accused of utilizing an unregistered cipher during standardized examination. This is a serious offense." "I wasn't using a cipher." Jiwon said, trying to keep his voice steady. I was writing notes to myself. In what language? Velrin asked. Jiwon hesitated. The truth would open a door he couldn't close. But lying would make everything worse. Korean. It's a language from Earth. Confused murmurs rippled through the committee. The Voxian chair's light flickered with what might have been surprise. Korean is not in our linguistic database. Earth's integration records indicate complete adoption of simplified Terran 3 centuries ago. All previous languages were classified as extinct. They're not extinct, Jiwon said quietly. Some of us still speak them. The committee chamber fell silent. The weight of that silence pressed down on Jiwon like physical force. He had just admitted to something that could have consequences far beyond a failed exam. A committee member he didn't recognize leaned forward. Its voice came through the translator as sharp clicks and whistles. You claim Earth has maintained hidden languages in violation of the integration accords? We speak simplified Terran, Jiwon said carefully. Like we agreed. But we also speak our own languages at home in private. There's no law against that. There is precedent, the Voxian said, consulting a holographic display. Linguistic diversity is classified as inefficient and potentially destabilizing. The Council strongly discourages it. Strongly discourages isn't the same as forbids, Jiwon pointed out. Velrin's 6 arms moved in agitation. The issue is not legality. The issue is deception. If Earth has hidden languages from the galactic database, what else has your species concealed? That question hung in the air like poison. Jiwon could see the suspicion forming in their eyes. Humanity was still the newest member of the Galactic Council, still proving itself trustworthy. This could damage everything. We haven't concealed anything important, he said. We just kept our languages, our grandparents' words, our poetry and songs, things that mattered to us personally. Why? The question came from a committee member whose species Jiwon couldn't identify. Why maintain inefficient communication systems? What purpose does it serve? How could he explain? How could he make them understand what it felt like to hear his grandmother's voice, speaking the same words her grandmother had spoken, connecting him to centuries of history and culture? How could he describe the way Korean shaped his thoughts differently than Terran, offering him new ways to understand the world? Because they're ours, he said finally. Because they're part of who we are. The Voxian chair dimmed its light, a sign of deep thought. This matter exceeds our authority. Student Jiwon, you are suspended from classes pending further investigation. We are forwarding this case to the Terran Coalition Embassy and to the Galactic Council's Cultural Compliance Division. Jiwon felt his stomach drop. Cultural Compliance Division. They were the ones who enforced the integration accords across all member species. If they got involved, this could become a diplomatic incident. You are dismissed, the Voxian said. Do not leave the planet. You will be contacted for further questioning. As the security officers escorted him out, Jiwon caught Professor Velrin watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Curiosity? Concern? Judgment? He returned to his dormitory in a daze. His roommate, a friendly Drell named Kess, was out at evening meal. Jiwon sat on his bed and pulled out his personal tablet, the one that wasn't connected to the university network. He opened his private files and looked at the documents stored there. Korean lessons his grandmother had recorded before she died. Digital copies of old Korean books and poems. Messages from other humans scattered across the galaxy. All written in their hidden languages. Should he delete them? Would that make this easier? His fingers hovered over the delete command, but he couldn't do it. These files were all he had left of his grandmother. They were his connection to something older and deeper than the Galactic Council. His tablet buzzed with an incoming message. It was from his sister Hyejin, who worked as a diplomat in the Terran Coalition. The message was short and written in Korean. 나는 들었다. 내가 오고 있다. 강해져라. I heard. I'm coming. Be strong. Jiwon set down the tablet and looked out his window at the alien sky. Somewhere up there, beyond the purple clouds, his sister was probably already boarding a transport. And somewhere even further, on Earth and human colonies across the galaxy, people were about to learn what he had done. He had written a few Korean characters on an exam paper. Such a small thing. Such a simple act. But simple acts, he was beginning to realize, could change everything. Hyejin arrived 3 days later on a diplomatic transport. Jiwon met her at the university's main landing platform, and the moment he saw her walking down the ramp in her formal coalition uniform, he felt something loosen in his chest. She looked tired from the journey but walked with the confident stride of someone who dealt with interstellar crises regularly. She hugged him hard, then pulled back and looked at him with the same expression their mother used when he had done something foolish but forgivable. "You wrote Korean on your exam paper," she said in simplified Terran. "Really, that's how this starts?" "I didn't think anyone would notice," Jiwon said quietly. "You didn't think." She sighed and switched to Korean, her voice dropping. "You know how careful we have to be. How many times did grandmother tell us? Every time she taught us, I know. I'm sorry." They walked through the university grounds toward the diplomatic housing where Hyejin had been assigned quarters. Students from various species stopped to stare at them. Word had spread fast. The human who wrote in the unknown language had become a minor celebrity on campus. Inside her rooms, Hyejin activated a privacy field and sat down heavily on a chair. "Tell me everything," she said. "And I mean everything." Jiwon explained the exam, Professor Velrin's reaction, the ethics committee hearing. As he talked, Hyejin's expression grew more troubled. "The Cultural Compliance Division is involved," she said when he finished. "That's bad. They haven't investigated Earth in 200 years. We've been model citizens of the Council. What will they do? Best case, you get expelled, sent back to Earth, and this becomes a footnote in your academic record. Worst case?" She paused. "They decide humanity has been systematically deceiving the Council. They demand full linguistic audits. They require us to actually eliminate our languages this time, with enforcement and monitoring." Jiwon felt cold. Can they do that? "The integration accords give them broad authority to ensure cultural compliance. We agreed to linguistic unity, Jiwon. That was the price of joining the Council. But we do speak simplified Terran. Everyone does for official business, and in private, millions of humans speak dozens of other languages. If they decide that's a violation, they can make our lives very difficult." She looked at him seriously. "You need to understand what's at risk here. Trade agreements, defense pacts, research partnerships, Earth's entire position in the galactic community." The weight of it pressed down on him. He had thought this was just about him, about one student and one exam. But of course it wasn't. It was never going to be that small. "What should I do?" he asked. Before Hyejin could answer, her communicator buzzed. She checked it and frowned. "The tribunal hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Both of us are required to attend." The next morning, Jiwon found himself in a much larger chamber than before. This wasn't just a university ethics committee. Representatives from a dozen major council species sat in a semicircle, with holographic attendance from dozens more. The Terran Coalition had sent 3 officials besides Hyejin. This had escalated faster than anyone expected. Jiwon sat in the center of the room, feeling very small. A holographic display showed his exam paper, the Korean characters magnified for everyone to see. The lead investigator was a Quelthari named Rixal Thorn, not related to Professor Velrin but sharing the same species' methodical precision. "Student Jiwon," Rixal said, her voice formal and cold. "Please demonstrate your ability to write in this unknown script." They gave him a tablet and stylus. Jiwon hesitated, then wrote a simple phrase. "제 이름은 지원입니다." My name is Jiwon. The characters flowed naturally from his hand. He had been writing Korean since he was 5 years old. It was as instinctive as breathing. "Now speak it aloud," Rixal commanded. Jiwon did, pronouncing the words carefully. The sound felt strange in this formal setting, like bringing something private and precious into harsh light. Murmurs filled the chamber. The alien representatives consulted their databases, their translation matrices, their linguistic analysis tools. All came back with the same result. Unknown language, no match in galactic records. "How long have you known this language?" Rixal asked. "Since I was a child. My grandmother taught me." "And how many other humans possess this knowledge?" Jiwon glanced at Hyejin. She gave him a tiny nod. They had discussed this. Honesty was the only option now. Millions, probably. Anyone of Korean heritage who chose to learn it. The chamber erupted. Representatives spoke over each other in a dozen languages, all filtered through translators into a cacophony of accusation and confusion. The lead Voxian representative called for order, its crystalline body pulsing with authority. "Student Jiwon," the Voxian said once silence returned, "you claim millions of humans speak languages not registered with the Council. This suggests systematic deception spanning centuries. Not deception, Jiwan said, his voice stronger now. Preservation. We speak simplified Terran for all official purposes, just as we agreed. But we also speak our heritage languages at home with family. The integration accords required linguistic unity for council business. We've provided that. The spirit of the accords, a representative from the Vortiman collective interjected, its hive-mind voice speaking in perfect unison, was complete linguistic standardization, efficiency through unity. That's one interpretation, Hyejin said, standing. As a coalition diplomat, she had the right to speak. The actual text of the accords requires humanity to adopt simplified Terran as our official language for interstellar communication. We have done so. Nowhere does it forbid the private use of heritage languages. Why was this never disclosed? Rixalthorn demanded. Because we knew how you would react, Hyejin said bluntly. We knew the council values uniformity over diversity. We made a choice to comply with the letter of the law while preserving something important to us. Before anyone could respond, another voice entered the discussion. Professor Velrin, watching from the observer's gallery, activated her speaking privileges. If I may, she said, I have spent the last 3 days studying this Korean script provided by student Jiwan. It is remarkably sophisticated. She brought up her own holographic display, showing the Hangul writing system. The alphabet is logical and systematic, designed for efficiency and ease of learning. The character construction follows clear rules. But more interesting is how it shapes cognition. Velrin showed examples of Korean grammar, the way the language used particles and agglutination to create meaning. Korean approaches information processing differently than simplified Terran. It compartmentalizes concepts in unique ways. I believe studying this language could offer insights into alternative cognitive frameworks. That is beside the point, the Voxian said. The issue is compliance with council protocols. Is it beside the point? A new voice spoke up. Jiwan turned to see another human standing in the observers section. He was young, maybe a year older than Jiwan, with nervous energy. My name is Dawan. I'm a student here too in the astrophysics program. I also speak Korean, and Mandarin, and Japanese. And I know at least 30 other human students on this campus who speak heritage languages. The chamber fell silent again. Dawan stepped forward, his hands shaking but his voice steady. We've all been hiding it, because we were afraid. Afraid of exactly this reaction. But if Jiwan is going to be punished for keeping his culture alive, then we all should be. More humans in the gallery stood up. One by one they identified themselves in their languages, Hindi, Arabic, Spanish, Swahili, Russian, dozens more. Each admission was like a small explosion in the chamber. Rixalthorn's 6 arms moved in visible agitation. This is unprecedented. How widespread is this practice? One of the Terran Coalition officials, a woman named Minseo, stood. She was older, with gray in her hair and the bearing of someone who had made a difficult decision. Very widespread. I am the director of the Terran Cultural Archive, a position that officially doesn't exist. We have been documenting and preserving human languages since the integration. Currently, we maintain active records of over 200 languages with varying numbers of speakers. She transmitted a data packet to the tribunal. This is our complete archive. Every language we've preserved, every speaker we've documented, every cultural practice we've maintained. I'm releasing it publicly, as of this moment, to the entire galactic network. Hyejin turned to stare at her. Director Minseo, that's not authorized. I know, Minseo said quietly. But I'm tired of hiding. Let the council see who we really are. The tribunal descended into chaos. Representatives argued with each other, with their home governments through holographic links with the Terran delegation. The Voxian chair called for a recess. During the break, Jiwan found himself surrounded by the other human students who had revealed themselves. Dawan clasped his shoulder. We're with you, he said in Korean. Whatever happens. Hyejin pulled Jiwan aside, her face pale. This is spiraling out of control. Minseo just committed career suicide, and she might have taken Earth's council membership with her. She did the right thing, Jiwan said. Did she? You don't understand galactic politics. The council doesn't like surprises. They really don't like feeling deceived. This could lead to sanctions, trade restrictions, even expulsion from the council. For speaking our own languages, for keeping our culture, for making them look foolish. for showing that humanity has been successfully hiding something for 3 centuries. It's about pride and power, Jiwan, not linguistics. When the tribunal reconvened, the atmosphere had changed. The representatives looked less confused and more angry. The Voxian chair spoke with barely contained frustration. The Terran delegation will explain how this deception was maintained for so long. Minseo stood again. It wasn't a conspiracy. It was millions of individual choices, parents teaching children, communities gathering in private, schools operating outside official oversight. We didn't hide it because we were ashamed. We hid it because we knew linguistic diversity would be seen as primitive, inefficient, unworthy of a council species. You were correct in that assessment, the Vortiman Collective stated flatly. Then perhaps, Professor Velrin said, her voice cutting through the tension, the council should examine why that is. All eyes turned to her. As a Quelthari, she commanded respect for academic achievement. I propose a different approach. Rather than punishing humanity for maintaining linguistic diversity, we should study why they felt it necessary and whether our assumptions about linguistic unity are actually beneficial. This is not a research proposal, Rixal Thorne said sharply. This is a compliance investigation. Perhaps it should be both, Velrin replied. The tribunal ended without a resolution. Jiwan was ordered to remain available for further questioning. The Terran delegation was given 48 hours to prepare a formal response to the allegations. As everyone filed out, Jiwan caught Professor Velrin's eye. She gave him a small nod, an acknowledgement of something he didn't quite understand yet. Outside the chamber, Heejin pulled him close. Whatever you've started, she said softly in Korean. There's no stopping it now. The news spread across the galactic network within hours. Humans hiding languages for centuries appeared in 1,000 different forms, translated into every major council tongue. By the next morning, humanity's secret was the biggest story in known space. Jiwan woke to find his personal communicator flooded with messages. Some were supportive, mostly from other humans. Others were harsh, calling him a traitor to the council's principles. A few were curious, asking him to teach them Korean or explain why it mattered. He got out of bed and checked the galactic news feeds. What he saw made his breath catch. On Earth, something extraordinary was happening. Humans were speaking their hidden languages openly for the first time in centuries. Videos flooded the network. A grandmother in Mumbai teaching her grandchildren Hindi on a busy street corner, surrounded by curious onlookers. A group in Mexico City holding signs in Spanish, demanding the right to cultural preservation. Families in Seoul speaking Korean not in whispers but in proud, clear voices. The movement had a name already, spreading through human social networks. The Linguistic Rebellion. Jiwan's communicator buzzed with a call from someone he didn't recognize. He accepted it cautiously. A young woman's face appeared, streaming from somewhere on Earth. She had bright eyes and spoke in rapid, excited Korean. Jiwan, my name is Yoonji. I'm a content creator and I just wanted to say thank you. What you did, it gave us all courage. I'm starting a new channel broadcasting only in Korean. I'm calling it The Forbidden Tongue. Will you be my first guest? Before Jiwan could respond, another call came in. Then another. His communicator couldn't handle the volume of requests. Hyejin appeared at his door looking exhausted. Have you seen the news? Some of it. All of it is chaos. Complete chaos. She came inside and collapsed on his small couch. The Terran Coalition is in emergency sessions. Half the government wants to crack down on the language speakers, restore order, show the council we're serious about compliance. The other half wants to support the movement, argue for cultural rights. What do you think we should do? She laughed bitterly. I think it's too late for should. This is happening whether we want it or not. The question is how we manage it. A priority message came through on Hyejin's official channel. She read it and her expression darkened. The council is convening a full session. They're demanding Earth's leadership appear before them to explain the situation. Will they comply? They have to. Refusing would be seen as an act of defiance. She looked at him seriously. You need to prepare yourself. You're going to be asked to speak too. You're the face of this whole thing now. The next few days passed in a blur. Jiwan found himself at the center of something much larger than one student's exam paper. Dowan and the other students who had revealed themselves formed a group they called the Linguistic Heritage League. They met in a common room at the university, planning their next moves. We need to make this about more than just breaking rules, Dowen said during one meeting. We need to show why linguistic diversity matters. A student named Borum, who spoke both Korean and Arabic, agreed. The council thinks multiple languages are inefficient. We need to prove them wrong. Professor Velrin started attending their meetings as an observer. She had become an unexpected ally, fascinated by the languages the humans were revealing. During one session, she asked Jiwon to explain how Korean shaped his thinking differently than simplified Terran. Jiwon thought carefully before answering. In Korean, we have different levels of formality built into the grammar itself. The way you speak to your grandmother is structurally different from how you speak to a friend. It makes you constantly aware of relationships, of respect, of your place in the social fabric. Simplified Terran has no such structure, Velrin observed. Exactly. When I think in Korean, I think about context and connection in ways that Terran doesn't encourage. It's not better or worse. It's different. And that difference gives me tools I wouldn't have otherwise. Velrin recorded everything, taking notes with 2 of her 6 hands while the other 4 gestured in thought. This supports my hypothesis. Different linguistic structures create different cognitive pathways. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, reactions to the linguistic rebellion varied wildly among different species. The Quelthari academic community split down the middle. Some, like Velrin, saw this as a fascinating research opportunity. Others viewed it as humans clinging to primitive inefficiency. The Vortiman collective, being a hive mind species, couldn't even comprehend why individuals would need different languages. Their official statement called humanity bewildering and possibly dangerous to Council stability. But the Drell, an artistic species known for their love of beauty and expression, reacted very differently. Drell artists across the galaxy began learning human languages, fascinated by the new forms of expression they offered. A famous Drell poet named Wesik released a collection of poems written in Korean, which he had learned in just 3 days through accelerated study. The poem that went viral across the network was titled, "Words My Ancestors Forgot." In it, Wesik mourned the languages her own species had lost when they joined the Council 800 years ago. Nobody had told them about the gradual erasure. It had just happened generation by generation, until the Drell spoke only in the common tongue and couldn't remember what they had lost. Her poem ended with a question that struck at the heart of everything. How many ways of seeing the stars did we forget? How many words for love? Jiwon read the poem 3 times, feeling something twist in his chest. The Drell had lost their languages. Other species had too. Humanity was just the first in centuries to resist. Director Minseo reached out to him privately. I've been contacted by linguists from 17 different species, she said. They're asking if we have records of their ancestral languages. Apparently the Council's archives exist, but they're sealed, classified as historical curiosities not worthy of preservation. Can we help them? I don't know. I've been searching through what little data we can access. The Council didn't destroy the old languages. They just made them hard to find, hard to learn, hard to pass on. Over time, people forgot. They thought uniformity was progress. A message came from an unexpected source. Rixal Thorne, the investigator who had interrogated Jiwon, requested a private meeting. Jiwon agreed, curious and cautious. They met in a quiet garden on the university grounds, a place where students from different species came to think. Rixal's 6 arms moved in patterns Jiwon had learned indicated uncertainty, an unusual state for a Quelthari. I have been examining the historical records, Rixal said without preamble, specifically the formation of the Galactic Council's linguistic policies. The documents are old, sealed under research privileges. What did you find? The Council's founders implemented linguistic unity as a solution to communication barriers. That part is well known. What is less known is that it was meant to be temporary. The original plan was for all species to learn a common language while maintaining their native tongues. Jiwon felt his pulse quicken. What happened? Over time, the efficiency of a single language became seen as superior to the richness of many languages. Bureaucrats made decisions. Resources were allocated toward the common tongue and away from language preservation. Within a few generations, the old languages began to fade. The Council didn't force this. They just stopped supporting the alternatives. Cultural engineering through resource allocation, Jiwon said quietly. Precisely. And now, 8 centuries later, We have what appears to be natural linguistic evolution, but it isn't natural at all. It was shaped by policy decisions made long ago by people who believed they were solving problems. Why are you telling me this? Rixal's arms moved in what might have been a gesture of frustration. Because I am a scientist. I value truth. And the truth is that humanity has revealed something we all should have questioned long ago. Why do we have only one way to speak when our ancestors had thousands? She transmitted a data package to Jiwan's communicator. These are the Council's sealed linguistic archives. Everything we have on extinct languages from member species. I am giving them to you illegally. I will likely face consequences. But this information should not be hidden. Jiwan stared at her. Why would you risk that? Because you were brave enough to write in Korean on an exam paper. The least I can do is be brave enough to share the truth. The full council session was scheduled for the following week. In the days leading up to it, the linguistic rebellion grew beyond anyone's expectations. Yoonji's streaming channel reached billions of viewers across multiple species. She interviewed humans speaking their heritage languages, explaining their histories, their poetry, their unique ways of seeing the world. One episode featured Boram explaining how Arabic calligraphy turned writing into art, how the visual beauty of the script added layers of meaning to the words themselves. Another showed a human elder speaking Nahuatl, the language of the ancient Aztecs, describing how its verb-centric structure created a worldview focused on processes rather than objects. The episodes fascinated alien viewers. For the first time, many council species were seeing linguistic diversity not as inefficiency but as richness. Not everyone was pleased. A coalition of conservative council members issued a statement condemning the human disruption of galactic order. They called for strict enforcement of the integration accords and punishment for those who had violated the spirit of linguistic unity. A Terran coalition official named Sangyuk became the face of this opposition among humans. He gave speeches arguing that the old ways should stay in the past, that humanity's future lay in full integration with the council, not in clinging to ancient languages. We fought hard to join the council, he said in one widely broadcast address. We made sacrifices. We agreed to their terms. Now some would throw all that away for the sake of sentimentality. I say we honor our commitments. I say we move forward, not backward. His words divided human opinion. Many agreed with him, especially those in government and business who had built careers on humanity's council membership. But many others, especially younger humans, saw things differently. Jiwan watched the debate unfold with a mixture of hope and fear. He had started this by accident, by carelessly writing a few Korean characters on an exam. Now it had become a movement that could reshape galactic civilization or tear humanity's place in it apart. The night before the council session, Hyejin came to his room. She looked more tired than he had ever seen her. Tomorrow you speak before the entire Galactic Council, she said. Every major species will be watching. What you say could determine humanity's future in the galaxy. No pressure then, Jiwan tried to joke. She didn't smile. I'm serious. They're going to ask you to defend why humanity should be allowed to keep these languages. They're going to question whether linguistic diversity is compatible with council membership. What do you think I should say? Hyejin was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke in Korean, her voice soft. 할머니가 우리에게 가르쳐 주신 것을 말해. 그것이 우리가 누구인지 말해. Tell them what grandmother taught us. Tell them who we are. Jiwan nodded, feeling the weight of centuries of hidden languages, of whispered lessons, of preserved culture settling on his shoulders. Tomorrow he would speak for all of it. Tomorrow the galaxy would decide if humanity's diversity was a treasure or a threat. The council chamber was the largest room Jiwan had ever seen. It stretched upward for what seemed like miles, with seating arranged in concentric circles that rose toward a domed ceiling, showing a holographic display of the galaxy itself. Representatives from 847 species filled the space, creating a tapestry of forms and colors that would have been beautiful if Jiwan hadn't been terrified. He sat in the center of the chamber, in a small platform that rotated slowly, so he could face different sections of the assembly. Hyejin sat behind him in the Terran delegation area, along with Director Min Seo and other human officials. Dowan and the other students from the Linguistic Heritage League watched from a gallery reserved for observers. The Voxian Supreme Arbiter, a massive crystalline being whose body pulsed with authority, called the session to order. The sound of 800 species falling silent was like the universe, holding its breath. This council convenes to address the matter of Terran linguistic noncompliance. The arbiter's voice resonated through perfect translation. Student G1 of Earth will present testimony regarding the preservation of unregistered languages among his species. G1 stood, his legs shaky. He had prepared a speech, practiced it a dozen times. But looking at the vast assembly of alien minds all focused on him, the words seemed inadequate. He began in simplified Terran, as protocol required. Honored representatives, I am G1, a student of xenolinguistics at Kronos Prime University. I stand before you because I wrote notes in Korean on an examination paper. That simple act revealed that humanity has maintained linguistic diversity, despite the expectation of uniformity. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The arbiter gestured for silence. I want to explain why we did this, Jiwan continued. Not to excuse it, but to help you understand. When Earth joined the Council 3 centuries ago, we agreed to adopt simplified Terran for official communication. We did so gladly. It opened the stars to us, he paused, gathering courage. But we also lost something. Humanity spoke thousands of languages before unification. Each one was a unique way of understanding reality. Each one carried centuries of culture, poetry, philosophy, and knowledge. The Integration Accords asked us to set those aside. The Accords required linguistic unity, a Quelthari representative interjected. This was clearly stated. Required for official purposes, Hyejin said from her seat, standing to invoke her right to speak. The exact wording was adoption of the common tongue for council business. It did not explicitly forbid private language use. The spirit was clear, the Vortamen Collective stated in unison. Was it? A new voice entered the discussion. Professor Velrin stood in the academic observers section. I have studied the original accords extensively these past weeks. The linguistic unity clause was written by the collective itself, a species that processes information through unified consciousness. They naturally assumed all communication should be unified. The collective's representative pulsed with what might have been irritation. Efficiency requires standardization, does it? Velrin activated a holographic display showing her research. I have been studying Korean and other human languages. I have found that different linguistic structures enable different problem-solving approaches. Let me demonstrate. She brought up a complex quantum mechanics equation that had puzzled researchers for decades. This problem involves nonlinear temporal causality. In simplified Terran, we describe time as a linear progression. The language itself makes it difficult to conceptualize time moving in multiple directions simultaneously. Her display shifted to show Korean grammar structures. Korean uses a complex system of verb endings that can indicate multiple temporal states existing together. When I learned to think in Korean, I could visualize this quantum problem differently. The language gave me cognitive tools Terran lacks. She showed her solution, a breakthrough that had the academic observers buzzing with excitement. I solved this yesterday. I could not have done so without learning to think in Korean. The chamber erupted in discussion. The arbiter called for order again. One example does not prove systematic value, a conservative council member argued. Then let me provide more. Director Minseo stood, transmitting data to the chamber's central display. These are case studies compiled over the past week. Researchers from 17 species have examined human languages and found unique cognitive frameworks in each one. The display showed study after study. Arabic's root pattern system enabling rapid morphological analysis. Mandarin's tonal structure creating enhanced auditory processing. Swahili's agglutinative grammar facilitating complex logical chains. Each language offered something unique. Furthermore, Minseo continued, I have disturbing information to share. The Council's sealed archives contain similar studies from centuries ago. Studies showing that linguistic diversity among member species enabled innovation and creative problem-solving. These studies were classified and ignored. The arbiter's crystalline body flashed with what might have been surprise. That is a serious accusation. It is a documented fact. Rixal Thorne stood from the investigators section. I have reviewed these archives. The early council recognized the value of linguistic diversity, but over time, administrative convenience was prioritized over cultural preservation. The extinction of member species' languages was not malicious. It was bureaucratic neglect over centuries. The chamber fell into shocked silence. Representatives consulted their databases, pulling up the files Rixal had mentioned. As they read, expressions changed from anger to confusion to dawning horror. An elderly representative of the Drell species stood, her long neck trembling. My people had 17 languages when we joined the council. I just learned this by reading these files. I did not know. None of my generation knew. They are all gone now. Other voices joined hers. Species representatives discovering what their ancestors had lost. Languages that had carried thousands of years of culture, erased not through force but through gradual systemic discouragement. This changes nothing, the Vortiman Collective insisted. Efficiency was gained. Progress was made. At what cost? The question came from an unexpected source. A representative of the ancient Arxian species, being so old they had been among the council's founders. I remember the early debates. We promised member species they could maintain their cultures while joining ours. When did that promise become a lie? The Arxians' words carried weight. As one of the founding species, their opinion shaped policy. Jiwan saw his opening. Honored representatives, I want to show you something. He transmitted a file to the central display. This is a poem written by my grandmother in Korean. She taught it to me when I was 5 years old. The Korean characters appeared beautiful and complex. Below them, a translation in simplified Terran. But the translation felt flat, missing something essential. The poem describes the feeling of autumn rain, Jiwan said. But in Korean, we have a specific word, chuseok, that means the autumn feeling of nostalgia and completeness together. Terran has no equivalent. The translation says autumn melancholy, but that's not quite right. Something is lost. He showed more examples. Japanese concepts like mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of transience. Arabic's ya'aburni, the hope to die before your beloved because life without them would be unbearable. Hindi's jugad, innovative problem solving through improvisation. These aren't just words, Jiwan said. They're ways of experiencing reality that exist in one language but not in others. When we lose a language, we lose these unique perspectives. We lose tools for understanding the universe. A Brel representative spoke up, his deep voice thoughtful. By this logic, the Council has been systematically eliminating ways of thinking for 800 years. Not intentionally, Yejin said. But yes, that's the effect. The debate continued for hours. Conservative members argued that linguistic diversity created communication barriers, inefficiency, potential for misunderstanding. Progressive members countered that uniformity created intellectual stagnation. During a recess, Jiwan found himself surrounded by alien researchers asking questions about Korean grammar, about human linguistic diversity, about how different languages shaped thought. A young Drell scholar named Kiva approached him shyly. I have been studying the poem you shared. The concept of chusok. My people must have had similar words once. I wish I could know them. Maybe you can, Director Minseo said, overhearing. The archives Rixal unlocked contain fragments of Drell languages. They're incomplete, but they're something. Kiva's eyes widened. You would share them? Of course. These languages belong to all of us now, to everyone who wants to reclaim what was lost. When the session reconvened, the Arbiter announced a surprising development. The Council recognizes that this matter requires deeper examination than a single session allows. We are forming a special committee to study the relationship between linguistic diversity and cognitive innovation. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat either. The question remained open. Then Sangyuk, the Terran official who opposed the linguistic rebellion, stood to speak. I must address my fellow humans. I understand the appeal of our old languages, I do. My own ancestors spoke Tamil, but we must be practical. The Council gave us the stars. Can we really risk that for the sake of sentimentality? Before anyone could respond, a message flashed across the central display. It was broadcast simultaneously to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Yoonji's streaming channel had just broken every viewership record. She appeared on screen, speaking in Korean with real-time translation. I want to show the Council something. These are messages I've received in the past week. The screen filled with videos, humans from every colony, every station, every corner of human space, speaking their heritage languages, but not just speaking them. They were teaching them to aliens. A Drell learning Arabic calligraphy from a human mentor, a Quelthari studying Mandarin tones, a Brel reading Hindi poetry with a human guide. Thousands of examples, connections forming across species lines through shared curiosity about language. The council fears linguistic diversity will divide us, Yunji said. But look at what's actually happening. Our languages are bringing us together. Aliens are learning human tongues not because they have to, but because they want to, because they see value in different ways of thinking. She switched to English, then to Spanish, then to Japanese, demonstrating her own multilingual nature. I speak 5 human languages and simplified Terran. Each one gives me tools the others lack. Why would I give any of them up? Why would anyone? The broadcast ended, but its impact resonated through the chamber. Representatives who had been opposed to linguistic diversity looked thoughtful. The evidence was undeniable. Humanity's hidden languages were already spreading, already being adopted by other species who saw their value. The Arxian representative stood again. I propose a new approach. Rather than enforce uniformity, let us embrace diversity. Let all species have access to the sealed archives. Let them reclaim their lost languages if they wish. Let language be a choice, not a mandate. That would create chaos, the Vortiman Collective protested. Would it? Professor Velrin countered. Or would it create exactly what the Council was meant to foster? A true union of diverse species, each contributing their unique perspectives to shared problems? The Arbiter's crystalline body pulsed as it processed the arguments. This matter requires a full Council vote. But I sense the will of this assembly has shifted. We will adjourn for deliberation. As representatives began filing out, Jiwon felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Hyejin, tears in her eyes. 할매언니가 자랑스러워할 거야, she whispered in Korean. Grandmother would be proud. Jiwon nodded, unable to speak. Around them, something unprecedented was happening. Species representatives were approaching the human delegation, asking about language lessons, about the archives, about how to reclaim what they had lost. The vote would come tomorrow. But regardless of the outcome, something fundamental had changed. The galaxy would never see language the same way again. The night before the vote, Jiwon couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony of his dormitory room, looking up at the purple sky of Kronos Prime. 3 moons hung in different phases, casting strange shadows across the university grounds. Somewhere up there, beyond those moons, his message was spreading across human colonies and alien worlds alike. His communicator buzzed softly, a message from his mother on Earth, sent hours ago due to the distance. He opened it. The video showed his mother sitting in their old kitchen, the same kitchen where his grandmother had taught him Korean while making kimchi. His mother's eyes were red from crying, but she was smiling. Jiwon, she said in Korean, your grandmother used to tell me that languages carry the souls of our ancestors. I never understood what she meant until now. Watching you speak to the council, I heard her voice in yours. I heard all the grandmothers and grandfathers who kept these words alive in secret, hoping someday they could be spoken freely again. She paused, wiping her eyes. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've already won. You've already given us back something we thought we had to hide forever. Thank you, my son. Thank you, the message ended. Jiwon saved it, adding it to the folder where he kept his grandmother's voice recordings, her lessons, her poems. Someday, he thought, these wouldn't need to be hidden anymore. A knock at his door. He found Dowan and several other students from the Linguistic Heritage League standing in the hallway. Can't sleep either? Dowan asked in Korean. Not even a little. They walked together to the university's observation garden, a place where students from all species came to watch the stars. Tonight it was crowded, but not just with humans. Alien students filled the space too, many of them studying human language texts on their tablets. Kiva, the young Drell scholar, approached Jiwon. I wanted to show you something, she said, her translator rendering her musical voice into Terran. I found fragments of my ancestral language in the archives Director Minseo shared. Only pieces, but I've been trying to reconstruct them. She showed him her tablet. Drell characters flowing and organic like vines. This word, she pointed. I think it means something like star song. The feeling of hearing starlight if it could make sound. We had a word for that once. My people had a whole vocabulary for different types of starlight. That's beautiful, Jiwon said. It's incomplete, broken, but it's mine. Kiva's eyes glistened. Because of what you did, I know my ancestors had poetry. I know they saw the universe in ways I can barely imagine. Even if I never fully recover their language, I know it existed. That matters. More aliens joined their conversation. A Quelthari student who had been learning Hindi, a Brel studying Japanese calligraphy, A member of a species Jiwan didn't recognize, trying to pronounce Arabic phrases. They stayed up all night, these students from a dozen worlds, sharing words and concepts and ways of seeing. By dawn, Jiwan understood something he hadn't quite grasped before. This wasn't about humans versus the council anymore. It was about everyone reclaiming something precious that had been slowly taken away. The council reconvened at midday. The chamber was even more crowded than before, with billions more watching via holographic link. The vote would determine the future of linguistic policy for the entire galaxy. The arbiter called the session to order. The council will now vote on the Linguistic Heritage Preservation Act. This act, if passed, will allow member species to maintain ancestral languages alongside the common tongue. It will open the sealed archives for public access. It will recognize linguistic diversity as a fundamental cultural right. The debate before the vote was fierce. Sang-hyuk spoke for the opposition among humans, arguing that the old agreement had brought prosperity and peace. Change this now, he warned, and we risk everything we've built. But then something unexpected happened. An ancient Arxian stood to speak. This being was older than some stars, having witnessed the council's entire history. I was there when we founded this council, the Arxian said, their voice carrying the weight of centuries. I was there when we debated linguistic policy. I remember the arguments. We were afraid. Afraid that diversity would lead to division. Afraid that multiple languages would prevent cooperation. The Arxian paused, their ancient eyes scanning the assembly. But we were wrong. We let fear guide us instead of wisdom. We confused uniformity with unity. They are not the same thing. The chamber fell silent. Unity is choosing to work together despite our differences. Uniformity is forcing everyone to be the same. We have spent 800 years pursuing uniformity and calling it unity. In the process, we have lost countless ways of understanding the universe. We have erased poems and philosophies and entire frameworks for thought. The Arxian gestured toward Jiwon. This young human wrote in Korean on an exam paper. Such a small act, but it revealed our failure. We have been so focused on administrative efficiency that we forgot what made joining together worthwhile in the first place. Our differences, our unique perspectives, our diverse ways of seeing and thinking and being. Other founding species representatives stood in agreement. The tide was turning. Professor Velrun presented her final research findings. In the 3 weeks since learning Korean, I have made breakthroughs in 4 separate research projects. The language's structure allowed me to approach problems from angles simplified Terran never suggested. This is not unique to Korean. Every language offers unique cognitive tools. She displayed comparative data. I have now studied 17 human languages. Each one enables different types of thinking. Mathematical reasoning, emotional processing, spatial awareness, temporal concepts. We have been using one language for all purposes when we could have hundreds of languages, each optimized for different types of thought. A Quelthari mathematician stood. I can confirm Professor Velrun's findings. I have been studying Mandarin. The language's logographic system creates different neural pathways for processing information. Yesterday, I solved a problem that has puzzled my research team for 6 years. I solved it by thinking in Mandarin. More examples followed. Researchers from different species sharing breakthroughs achieved through learning human languages. The evidence was overwhelming, but the Vortiman collective remained opposed. This may benefit individuals, their unified voice stated, but it complicates administration. It reduces efficiency. It creates room for misunderstanding, does it? Director Minseo stood with data ready. I have analyzed communication errors in council business over the past 2 centuries. The vast majority occur not because of linguistic differences, but because of cultural assumptions embedded in simplified Terran itself. The language was designed by a committee. It reflects compromise, not any single culture. Everyone using it makes mistakes because nobody fully owns it. She showed examples. Negotiations that failed because Terran lacked concepts crucial to certain species. Scientific collaborations that struggled because the common tongue couldn't express necessary distinctions. Adding linguistic diversity doesn't create problems. It creates solutions. The debate continued, but Jiwon could see the momentum shifting. Representatives who had been uncertain were nodding. Species who had been opposed were reconsidering. Finally, the arbiter called for the vote. The process took hours. 847 species, each casting their decision. The chamber's central display showed the running tally: support, opposition, abstention. The numbers climbed. Jiwon sat frozen, watching. Heejin gripped his hand. Dawan and the other students barely breathed. The final count appeared: 512 species in support, 241 opposed, 94 abstaining. The Linguistic Heritage Preservation Act had passed. The chamber erupted. Some representatives cheered. Others protested. Many simply sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. The arbiter's voice cut through the chaos. By majority vote, the council recognizes the right of member species to maintain ancestral languages alongside the common tongue. The sealed linguistic archives will be open to public access. Cultural education is hereby recognized as a fundamental right. Jiwon felt tears on his face. Around him, the human delegation was celebrating, but so were others. Drell representatives embracing each other. Quelthari scholars already planning research expeditions to recover lost languages. Even some conservative species looked relieved, as if a weight they hadn't known they carried had been lifted. The Arxian who had spoken earlier approached Jiwon. "Young human, you have reminded us of something we should never have forgotten. Diversity is not a problem to be solved. It is a treasure to be preserved." The celebration continued as representatives filed out, but Jiwon noticed something important. The opposition hadn't disappeared. Sang-yuk and others like him looked grim. The Vortiman collective departed in silent disapproval. This victory was real, but it wasn't complete. The work of actually implementing the new policy would be complicated and contested, but that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight was for celebration. 1 year later, Jiwon stood in the same university examination hall where everything had started. But this time he wasn't taking a test. He was teaching a class. Introduction to Korean linguistics had filled within minutes of registration opening. The room held students from 23 different species, all eager to learn the language that had sparked a galactic revolution. Jiwon wrote on the holographic board in both Hangul and simplified Terran. "Today we'll learn about honorifics," he said, "the grammatical structures that indicate respect and social relationships." A Quelthari student raised one of her 6 hands. "How does one indicate respect in verb conjugation?" Jiwon smiled. "Let me show you." As he taught, he thought about how far things had come. The Linguistic Heritage Preservation Act had transformed the galaxy. Across known space, species were reclaiming lost languages from the archives. New universities offered courses in hundreds of tongues. Researchers were making breakthroughs by thinking in multiple linguistic frameworks. Not everything was smooth. Some species still opposed the changes. Administrative systems struggled to adapt. There were debates about how to implement multilingual policies fairly, but the direction was clear. The galaxy was becoming more diverse, not less. Dawan and Yunji had founded the first officially multilingual university on Earth. Students from across the galaxy attended, learning not just subjects but languages, immersing themselves in different ways of thinking. Heejin had been promoted to ambassador of cultural exchange. She spent her time helping species navigate the new linguistic landscape, mediating disputes, fostering understanding. Professor Velrin had published 7 papers on the cognitive benefits of multilingualism. She was now fluent in 5 human languages and had started learning recovered Drell. Even Rixall Thorne had found a new purpose. She led the archive recovery project, working to reconstruct as many lost languages as possible from the scattered records. After class ended, Jiwon stayed behind to help a struggling Brell student with pronunciation. The student's vocal structure made Korean sounds difficult, but they were determined. "Why does this matter so much to you?" Jiwon asked gently. The Brell student's translator rendered their response. "Because my species lost our language 600 years ago. I will never speak my ancestors' words, but I can speak yours. I can experience what linguistic diversity feels like. It helps me imagine what we lost." Jiwon understood. That was what this was really about. Not just preserving human languages, but helping everyone remember what diversity meant, what it felt like to have multiple ways of seeing and being and thinking. That evening, Jiwon sat in his small apartment and opened his personal files. He pulled up a video he had recorded a year ago but never sent. It was a message to his grandmother, filmed the night before the council vote. In the video, he spoke in Korean. "Halmione, I don't know if you can hear me wherever you are, but I want you to know that the language you taught me in secret, the words you made me promise to protect, they're not secret anymore. Tomorrow the whole galaxy votes on whether we can speak them freely. I'm scared. But I'm also grateful, because everything I'm doing because you taught me that language is more than words. It's who we are. He had never sent it because his grandmother was gone, her voice existing only in old recordings. But tonight he finally shared it publicly, posting it to the network with a simple caption. To all the grandmothers who kept languages alive in secret, we remember, we honor you. We will never hide again. The message spread quickly, gathering responses from across the galaxy. Humans sharing their own stories of hidden languages and brave ancestors. Aliens sharing newly discovered fragments of their lost tongues. A choir of voices speaking in 1,000 different ways. United not by uniformity but by respect for each other's uniqueness. G1 stood on his balcony one last time looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity's languages were being spoken on worlds his grandmother had never dreamed existed. Korean and Swahili and Arabic and hundreds more. Mixing with alien tongues. Creating new possibilities for thought and expression. He thought about the exam paper that had started everything. The careless moment that had changed the galaxy. And he thought about what he had learned since then. Some had called Korean a dead language. They had been wrong. It was never dead. It had only been sleeping, waiting for someone brave enough to wake it. But the real lesson wasn't about Korean specifically. It was about all languages, all ways of thinking, all the diverse methods by which conscious beings tried to make sense of the universe. Every language that died took with it unique insights, irreplaceable perspectives, entire universes of thought. The galaxy had almost lost that understanding, had almost let efficiency erase beauty, uniformity replace diversity, convenience override meaning, but they hadn't. Thanks to millions of humans who had kept languages alive in secret, thanks to aliens who had the courage to question old assumptions, thanks to one student who had written a few Korean characters on an exam paper without thinking about the consequences. G1 smiled and went inside. Tomorrow he would teach another class. Tomorrow researchers would make new discoveries using insights from diverse languages. Tomorrow the galaxy would continue learning that its strength came not from being the same, but from being beautifully, impossibly different. And somewhere he liked to imagine his grandmother was smiling too.